Good morning. I hope it's working now. I think I might have plugged the mic into the wrong spot. Are you seeing me now and hearing me now? Um, do you hear me? I hope so. Okay, let's get going. Um, are you seeing me? I'm just checking. I'm not hearing or seeing anyone. Okay. Hey, guys. You can hear me. Awesome. Okay, let's get going. We have a big show today because we want to treat the latest news about the Ivy grad who was caught in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, who is the lead suspect in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. This young man's name is Luigi Mangione. And I want to make sure that as we talk about him, we also talk about another shooter of Luigi's same age. And he is also 26 years old. And this other person by the name of Daniel Perry was yesterday, just the same day that Luigi Mangione was taken into custody. Daniel Perry was acquitted for the murder of Jordan Neely in a New York subway car. We will be hearing later this morning from his father, Andre Zachary. So I just want to make sure you understand what today's show is going to be about. We are going to treat these topics with compassion, empathy, and with a broad lens about what has happened in our society that so many of us lack empathy. And included among those are the people who run healthcare companies and also voters who have not seen it yet to be the best way to go to have universal, affordable healthcare. And when I talk about the big picture and the lack of empathy, I am absolutely not condoning violence or murder. I am looking at this to ask ourselves how we can see our whole humanity and move forward from all of these tragedies. So let's begin now with Luigi Mangione. As you can see from my thumbnail, I chose this. I put this up yesterday afternoon because what we knew at that time was his name, Luigi Mangione, and that he was a UPenn graduate. And so I put this up because it seemed like a contradiction. When we heard about the murder of Brian Thompson, a lot of people perceived, and I still think it's true, that this was sort of politically motivated, that the shooter had animus toward United Healthcare in particular and corporate America in general, and was very upset by how these healthcare companies denied claims and mistreated people that were supposed to be covered by their insurance. And so he became, for what it's worth, a sort of folk hero to people, not to me. I'm just discussing this as a kind of class warrior. And I think that narrative got shook up when we found out more about him, right? More about Luigi. And what I also want to say is we have seen a lot of what you can I think you can only call thirst trap photos, which I find distasteful. I couldn't help but I shared an article, and that's what popped up. You know, a photo of him in Hawaii with his shirt off. This is a 26-year-old young man, right? He is the age, around the age of my oldest child. I think adults need to get their act together and think about what they're doing when they do this kind of thing and objectify someone in this fashion. So I am trying to carefully select photos that don't do that to him, because I think it takes something away from us when we treat people that way. Now I'm going to actually make this a bit bigger so you can see it. I'm going to walk you through, and let me just actually remove this. My goal here is to give you what I understand to be the updated reporting about what brought Luigi Mangione from his what appears to be happy childhood, successful youth as a valedictorian of an all-boys private school in Maryland, to success and friendship at University of Pennsylvania, to the day yesterday when he was eating alone at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, with a mask on when he was approached by police officers. And when asked if he had been in New York recently, began visibly shaking. What happened between that childhood and that moment yesterday? From what we have heard. And I want to be absolutely clear. I am telling you what I have heard. And there are some inconsistencies in the reporting, and I will try to help you or try to identify those. So let's again look at this. This is Luigi Mangione. He delivered the valedictory address at his high school. And I want to share a portion of that with you so you can see how balanced he was. He was at that time, apparently one of the smartest kids in his class. And also, and I understand that grades don't necessarily reflect someone's intelligence. There may have been other kids who were not performing well in school. I'm just referring to him. They may have been equally as intelligent, but here he is. And you can see, and I want to share this with you, what he was like. And I'm not going to give you the whole speech, but what he was like as a young man. And keep in mind that we're talking about around 6 years later, a huge transformation.
Well set. Congratulations. Thank you.
Headmaster Smythe, Mr. Hubeck, members of the Board of Trustees, family, friends, faculty, and fellow students, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Gilman's 116th Founders Day. I'm honored to be speaking to you all today on behalf of the Gilman class of 2016. When I started writing the speech, I talked with several students and teachers and asked how they would describe the class of 2016. Many of the students characterized our class as inventive, in both imagination and initiative.
Okay, I want you to see he is confident, he seems social, he seems kind, he seems not arrogant. This is this kid. Okay, and yes, he comes from a wealthy family. More on that in a moment. So this is the home that he grew up in Townsend, Maryland, valued at, just under $1 million, maybe 800,000. It is a split level ranch type home in a nice neighborhood. Let's also look at his family. This was a Christmas with them together. It looks like, I don't know if that is his sister and a brother or brother-in-law, but she looks to be pregnant. You also have another sister. You've on the right, you have, it appears to be his mother on the far right with his father. What we know, and then, sorry, let me just say there they are. And this is him at Penn. Now, what do we know about this family? What we know so far is that Luigi is one of approximately 30 cousins. They share a grandfather, Nino not Nino. One of his cousins is Nino Mangione, who is in the state house, a Republican representative of the state house. I believe it's in Maryland. At any rate, or it could be a different state. Don't call me on it, but I believe the whole family kind of lives in Maryland. So he's one of many cousins. His paternal grandfather, named Mangione, came to America and built up the kind of family dynasty to the point where he owned lots of real estate, some golf resorts, and the like. So much so that, based on what I have read, either the grandfather or the family trust gave around $1 million to a hospital, and one of the units, it might have been the maternity ward or the high-risk birth unit, is named after the family. And apparently all, if not many, of the grandchildren were born in that same hospital. Here is a photo of the family estate. I should also say that it's my understanding that the family also, his grandfather also started nursing homes, and that Luigi did in high school work in one of those nursing homes. Based on my reading of the news as well, it appears that, you can imagine, I think what I understand is the patriarch had like 10 children. Not all of the children are going to want to or be tapped to go into the business. But from what I've read, Luigi's father was one of the ones who was continuing in the grandfather's business. Okay, now here is what happened next. After graduating from Penn, actually, let me just go back for a second. After graduating from Penn, and while he was in college, let me just back up. I've heard different things about what he majored in. I've heard that it was engineering. I've also seen it described as computer science. I'm not sure exactly how the degree was conferred by Penn, but basically, I think his focus was on engineering or computer science, and that he, while in college, started some kind of gaming company with a friend. Based on what I've read, after college, he got a job as a software engineer. Hey, Candy Carol, I haven't seen you in a while. Anyhow, he got a job as a software engineer, and at one time decided at some point, and keep in mind, he graduated from high school in 2016 and college in 2020. So he's probably of that class at Penn in 2020, where they all went home in March and probably had a virtual graduation. So after graduating, at that time, jobs are largely virtual. He went to, and I'm going to open this up a bit, he went to Hawaii after graduation at some point, and was part of, you can see this group of appears to be friends. They also might be roommates, kind of a fabulous, instead of a remote workspace, it was like a living space where people work remotely. And people who he lived with have been interviewed, as well as the person who ran the place. And you can see Luigi is second to the left, big smile on his face, lots of kids on the beach at sunset, kind of a post-college dream, if you ask me. And one of the things that we learn around this time, and I'm just trying to fit these time frames. Imagine he graduates in 2020. My understanding is that maybe the other job, I don't know if he was working from home, but at some point he goes to Hawaii. And I believe he went to Hawaii in around 2022, or went to work, live in this space at that time. And the man who runs a place and rents out these spaces, I think it's communal living, but everyone paid around $2,000 a month. And I don't know which island it is on, in Hawaii. Just don't shoot me. At any rate, one of the islands in Hawaii, and that's where he was apparently working for a period of time. And part of what I understand was a condition of staying there, living in this remote communal living and workspace, was everyone had to bring something culturally, something to the group. And what I read was that he had a book club. They would meet and discuss. And one of the people in that space, one of the adults, apparently was interviewed, and I guess he was a former professor, or maybe is currently a professor, and said he found the insights Luigi made to be more astute and to be almost a closer reader of text than even he was. And we will add here that part of what people have discovered is his webpage on Goodreads, which apparently hasn't been taken down yet. And he either read or had on his list around 300 books that he wanted to read. And a little bit more on that later. So this was him in Hawaii. What we understand is shortly after that, when he was, let me just blow this up. When he, throughout the time, actually, let me do this too, sorry. While he was in Hawaii, what we understand, and again, this is what I have read that he told people, and it seems truthful, but again, we will learn more things soon. My understanding is that at some point in his life, he was discovered that he has back pain associated with maybe one vertebrae being slightly off, maybe by a half inch, and caused him a lot of pain. And no, I don't know which vertebrae. Maybe you can count when I show you the x-ray. And so in around, what I understand is in around early 2023, he left this living space and told one of the owners there that he was going to be going back home to Maryland because he needed to have back surgery. What I also know is during the time that he's a very athletic kind of guy, tries to, engage in kind of clean living, clean eating. He would do things like, you saw him indoor rock climbing, and he would be very careful when he came down. He did surfing and so on, or he took surf lessons. He's in Hawaii. And apparently while he was there in that kind of 6-month period from 2022 to early 2023, apparently while he was surfing, he injured his back. And my understanding is that his back issues predated that injury, and that this accident while surfing just exasperated it and made him so terribly uncomfortable that they decided it was time for him to get surgery. So then he goes home. Now, what I have pieced together, and this is where there are some inconsistencies. You'll hear some people say that he just had back surgery this summer, June or July of 2024. But based on what I'm seeing elsewhere, it's more likely he had the surgery in the summer of 2023. And that matters, and it will explain a lot of things. So he put up this photo on his social media, and it appears to be, and he put this up because this is on his profile. Like, can you imagine your profile picture and then another photo of one of his profiles? This was his x-ray, I believe, of his back. And what you can see are these 4 pins in his back this is a kind of fusion surgery. I am not, I am not a doctor. I've heard it described for people who've looked at this photo, that this surgery was designed to deal with trying to realign the vertebrae in his back and end his pain. And again, I believe that this happened in the summer of 2023. And based on the reading that I have done, Timothy Langston says this whole thing's manufactured. Yeah, no, this whole thing does not seem manufactured. These are real people, and I'm reporting based on information from his family, his friends, and people who are credible and spoken to the New York Times. Okay, so what we understand is that his surgery is probably summer of 2023. It's possible it was a year later. People could be mistaken. So based on that timeline, summer of 2023, he has the surgery, he recuperates, and then apparently he went back to Hawaii and was in touch with one of the men who owned the place he'd stayed before, but he was staying somewhere else. Now, what also happened, what I should say, is apparently people said that he lost his job at the beginning of 2023 before that surgery. Okay, so then he goes back to Hawaii apparently after his surgery, and then kind of disappears at the beginning of 2024. I'm not sure where he was. It's possible he was in California. The reason why I believe this is because, according to reporting, this November, like around November 16th, his mother reported him missing, and she reported him missing in California. Okay, so that is what we know. What we also know is some friends said it was this summer, around June or July, that he completely suddenly dropped off social media. And apparently friends were reaching out to him. There are posts from a friend saying, I haven't heard from you. Are you going to keep the commitment to me regarding my wedding? I don't know if he was going to be, a groomsman or what have you. We don't really know, but it looks like he suddenly dropped off social media entirely and only reappears with this shooting. Okay, so that gets us to just trying to get us a timeline before we talk about it and get on to other topics. That gets us to this moment. That gets us to this moment here when he was seen in a youth hostel or a hostel, housing, an inexpensive housing on the Upper West Side of New York. At some point, he arrived maybe a couple weeks or 10 days before the shooting. The shooting, remember, was on December 4th. His mother, so mid-November, mid to late November, it might have been the 16th or the 26th. I don't remember the exact date. Could have been the 26th. His mother reports him missing. Shortly after he's reporting missing, he is seen at a youth hostel in New York. He took down his mask because the clerk asked him to. I guess she said he was flirting with him. And this is why we had that photo, right? We also, the next thing we know is there he is right in front of the New York Hilton. I think it's around 53rd Street or on 53rd Street, allegedly shooting Brian Thompson. What we also know, and let me just say this about it, is when the police found him, they believe that the gun they found was a ghost gun that was printed on a 3D printer, as was the silencer. Now, just to be clear, we don't know whether he was the person who printed them. And I don't want to tell you any more about gun printing, but it wouldn't surprise me that given his computer expertise, he would be someone capable of doing that and getting the ammunition, etc. Okay, so then we had the shooting. And then that was December 4th. And then for 5 days, we are not sure where he was. We knew that he biked on a city bike into Central Park, dropped his backpack there, we believe, and then he disappeared on a bus. He shows up in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and this is that McDonald's. And he apparently was having breakfast yesterday morning. And no, I don't know what he had for breakfast. And yes, does it seem like a contradiction that someone very healthy would be eating something so unhealthy? It may seem like a contradiction, but it might be entirely aligned with if something really happened to him. And I have some theories in a moment. So what happened, and again, there's some different stories around this, but what we understand is a customer at the McDonald's yesterday morning recognized him. And so that customer went up to one of the employees who called it into the police. The police showed up, approached him, asked him to take down his mask. He took down the mask and they knew they had their guy. They recognized his face, they believed, from the crime photos. They asked him for his ID. He showed them an ID. It was a fake ID. It had his photo on it, but it was a fake ID with a false name. But it was the same fake ID he'd used at that youth hostel. They put 2 and 2 together very quickly and asked him, have you been to New York recently? Where they reported that he began visibly shaking. I don't know why that gets me. I think it gets me because it shows me he's not, maybe not a sociopath, and that this is a very scared, damaged young man, not justifying what he did, just adding to the story. Okay, then they take him into custody. Next, remember this was in Pennsylvania that they take him into custody. This is him looking back at the camera. And then we have him first again in Pennsylvania. And then this is his mugshot. So we have a young man with so much promise. And here you see him in this final shot. Now, I've given you the narrative. This is what I have beyond the fact that the family, through Nino Mangione, the representative, the state assembly rep, who again, I think is Maryland. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. And also Vidalian Green said he had 4 fake IDs and his actual passport with him. He also had the gun that was allegedly used in the shooting with him and the silencer. So we've got 2 different things going on. He was brought into custody. I've heard mixed stories about whether he was speaking to the police or not. My understanding is twofold. One, he was arraigned in Pennsylvania and charged with a series of crimes that were committed in Pennsylvania, allegedly. And then last night afterward, he was indicted in New York, even though he has not been, as of last night, arraigned there. Now, talking about the crimes in Pennsylvania related to essentially lying to the police about who he was. They said to him, it's a crime to lie about your identity, and he admitted who he was, by the way. So lying about who he was, carrying this particular gun, having the fake IDs, crimes like that, interfering in an investigation, those types of crimes he was charged with in Pennsylvania. And then you go over to New York, and they have charged him with murder in New York, as well as other crimes. Okay, so that is basically our timeline. Whew. Now, let's again, I'm going to give some full context here. Let's again try to understand a couple things. One, he did apparently have on his person like a 2 or 3 page handwritten kind of confession, or what the police call a manifesto. He in this said, I worked alone, so you don't have to go searching for anybody, and that, these parasites had it coming, something to that effect. And I think he wrote that out by hand and carried it with him in case he was caught. He didn't print it out and carry it with him. He wrote it out. And I don't know if he was carrying that from the youth hostel, if he had that on his person the whole time in case it would come to that. They discovered that. What I also want to say to you is I shared something in the chat for this, but it's yesterday. But since I had to do I had to set up a new stream, you don't see it here. But I did set something in the chat, share something in the chat that appears to be something he wrote and posted between the time of the shooting, December 4th, and the time that he was captured yesterday, December 9th. And if this is genuinely written by him as opposed to a poser, it describes why he was so angry with United Healthcare. Again, if this is true, United Healthcare was his insurance carrier. And according to this actual manifesto, again, if it's truthful, it talks about his mother's back pain and how she suffered, about his own pain, and kind of comes to the conclusion that he decides to take the law into his own hands. Now, I think we're going to find a lot more about this. Now, I'm seeing comments in this. And Roxanne Tracy says, well, Trump got away with everything and he's now president again. Let this man go. Okay, so I guess we have a lot of different questions. I mean, I believe in the rule of law. I believe that he will get a trial. I'm worried about how all people in prison are treated who have any kind of injury or disability. And I'm also concerned, given how young and attractive he is, about how he will fare in prison. And that is all of a concern for everybody in this situation. I think a couple things emerge from this, which is wanting to know what happened with him. Basically in the, in the year, or rather the 6 months, like the beginning of 2024, until he disappears in the summer, and then what happened to him between when he disappeared and November. I do wonder whether he was given pain medications after the surgery and whether he became addicted. There's no sign of that, though, because when he was asked by the judge, or asked when he was taken in whether he had any addictions, I think he said no. Doesn't mean that's true. But I don't know if he had a mental health break. It's not really clear to me, or whether he was just very determined and very calculating and feeling so miserable about his life and his pain that he's decided to go ahead and throw his life away for what he perceived to be a higher cause. Again, not condoning it, trying to understand. Going back to his Goodreads page, apparently, as part of the book group he had in Hawaii, one of the books they read was Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, which has been printed as a book. Again, Ted Kaczynski was the Unabomber who was sending pipe bombs to academics he hated because he really hated the where tech. I'm simplifying it, haven't read it, but my understanding is he had a dystopian view of society and technology, and his solution was to kill people. Okay, so we don't really know much. That's where we are. I think it's a tragedy all around. As you know, I said to you yesterday that I would be sharing stories every day until the shooter was caught, of people who suffered due to being denied health insurance or having it delayed. And we have shared those stories. And I really want to also recognize that this is a huge concern to people. And I wish if anything comes out of this tragedy, it is a real discussion about how we cannot continue to allow the for-profit healthcare industry, especially insurance, to be skimming so much money out of healthcare and interfering with the care that we get. I'm someone who believes that markets work in conjunction with regulation. And I think given that, and it's my understanding that United Healthcare administers one of the Medicare plans, Medicare Advantage. I've had a terrible experience working with Medicare Advantage for my mother. Just say that. The fact that these companies like United Healthcare have government contracts means they should have government regulation. And there should be a limit on the kind of profits that they're allowed to derive and the executive compensation they're allowed to pay. This is not okay, what they're doing and how they're hurting people. Now, allow me to pivot, because I did promise that we would be talking about other, we would be making a parallel here about Luigi Mangione being taken into custody for the shooting of Brian Thompson, the healthcare CEO, and what appears to be a politically motivated or an emotionally motivated hit combined with mental health issues. I need to talk, though, about the murder of Jordan Neely. We should be hearing Jordan Neely's name as much as we are hearing Brian Thompson, and these issues tie together. Jordan Neely was having mental health issues, and he was murdered by someone on the subway. He was put in a chokehold and strangled on the subway. And the man's name who did this is Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny is exactly the same age as Luigi Mangione. And yesterday, in something that could only be written by Hollywood, Daniel Penny was acquitted in his trial of murder. And I need to share with you what Laura Ingraham had to say about this, because I will say that she really has absolutely no self-awareness whatsoever. And I've got to find this video for you because I did have it, I swear to you, and it's not clear to me. Let me make sure if this is not it, we shall see.
Into it later.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to begin. Here's what Laura Ingraham had to say yesterday. Let's listen.
We'll dig into it later. The Instagram posts from nutbag people, which I was sent in the commercial break earlier, crazy. Like, he's cute, and people celebrating this. This is a sickness. Honestly, it's so disappointing, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And up next, the other big news out of New York, Daniel Penny. A lot of people think he's a hero, and tonight he's not guilty. My take next.
What the fuck? She just said it was terrible to treat Luigi Mangione as a hero, and yet here she is treating Daniel Penny as a hero. Do people not have the ability to look in the mirror? I mean, if Irony were still alive because it died long ago, she would be turning in her grave and clawing at the dirt to come out, to live again so she could die after this ridiculous lack of self-awareness. So that brings me to the fact that we should absolutely pay our respects to the person who was killed by Daniel Penny. And I want to remind you, his name is Jordan Neely. His father, Andre Zachary, spoke yesterday. Now, his son was murdered. Let me say it differently. Daniel Penny was found not guilty yesterday, and he was charged with criminally negligent homicide for choking his son and killing him on the subway a year ago. We owe it to Jordan Neely to hear his father's words. Let's go ahead and do this now. There's a little noise in the background from the protest, but I think you'll be able to hear him.
I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this.
Let me translate. He says, let me over the noise. I miss my son. My son did not have to go through this.
It hurts.
It
really,
hurts.
Really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged.
What are we going to do now? I've had enough of this. The system is rigged, Andre Zachary says. This is the face of a grieving man.
Come on, people.
Come on, people.
Let's do something about this.
Let's do something about it. Too often, we have Eric Garner's mother here.
They also had Eric Garner's mother speak. And you know that he had asthma, and he was selling loose cigarettes, which is only a small tax evasion misdemeanor, which they overcharged as a felony after the fact, after he was surrounded and pushed to the ground and strangled and killed on a city street. So we actually can see that in our society, it is the identity of the victim which often dictates whether a killer goes to jail, whether a jury will convict someone, right? We also, and not even just police officers, right? Because we know that Daniel Perry was not a police officer. He was just a young white man, just like Luigi Mangione. But the victims, we also know, and I'm going to pivot to another topic, but the same day or around the same day, on December 4th, when Luigi Mangione apparently killed Brian Thompson, there were a group of young men who killed, or at least one young man who killed some migrants young migrant men or There were some young migrant teenagers in New York who did not speak English. They were asked, "Do you speak English?" by these violent hoodlums. And when the teenagers said no, they were killed. They were stabbed to death. No one has found those killers. So it shouldn't surprise us again that we value, or the society or the legal system values people differently, doesn't value life equally. And that makes me terribly, terribly sad. Now, we got two more things before Crazy Town. The first is Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, as you know, is nominated, will be nominated, is Donald Trump's pick to be director of head of the DNI, the director of national intelligence, to oversee, all of the intelligence agencies. And folks have been concerned about that. And we've shared that here, that she's been called by Russia as our girl, that she's had deep admiration for Assad, the now recently deposed leader of Syria, who is in exile. And we learned yesterday some bombshell news that Tulsi Gabbard, and as you know, Tulsi Gabbard served in the Senate, right? I'm sorry, she was not in the Senate. She was a former, she was in the House of Representatives from Hawaii. And what we're finding out is that when there was someone to bring in, they had, the U.S. had an informant or source in Syria, and she was not trusted. So let's hear what they did to keep information from her when she was a member of Congress. This is jaw-dropping.
This was 2018, and this was this House Foreign Affairs Committee meeting, closed doors, with this Syrian defector who had become famous, known as Caesar, who had exposed these terrible atrocities committed by the Assad regime, executions, torture, a trove of photographs.
Caesar photos, people may have heard of, yes.
Thousands of photos, okay? And they wanted to have a private meeting with him. And when he would meet with lawmakers privately, he would take off his mask and his disguise and be himself and reveal his identity. However, there was concern among both Republican and Democratic staffers. They weren't fully confident that Tulsi Gabbard could be trusted. Would she respect his anonymity? Would she do something to somehow reveal his identity? And so they agreed. They told Caesar's team, including Muaz, please just make sure he has his face covered when she enters the room. So that tells you the misgivings they had.
Holy shit. Yeah. So not to be trusted. Now, of course, Assad is out of power, but he's over hanging out with Putin in Moscow. So not a great situation. I got no, I think I've actually now I have reached the place of Crazy Town. So Crazy Town involves Pete Hegseth, who is still in the running to be Secretary of Defense, despite his history, credible allegations of rape and a settlement with a woman he allegedly raped, despite his ongoing history of allegedly drinking on the job, being having the smell of alcohol on his breath when he was at Fox News in the early morning, despite his allegations of shouting Islamophobic comments when he was running a veterans organization, despite his mismanagement of their funds. He is still Donald Trump's pick. And so with that, you would think that would just be the whole Crazy Town story, but there is more. Now, let me just say, as a setup to this, one of the people standing in the way, I mean, he needs to get through the Senate confirmation process. And we have Senator, as you know, Joni Ernst, who has been an obstacle to that. And she's particularly not fond of his sexism. So let's play the gaslighting that we are hearing now. Okay, here we go. Here is what we are hearing from Pete Hegseth when he was asked about his position on women in the military. You're not going to believe it.
And I also want an opportunity here to clarify comments that have been misconstrued that I somehow don't support women in the military. Some of our greatest warriors, our best warriors out there are women who serve, raise their right hand to defend this country and love our nation, want to defend that flag, and they do it every single day around the globe. So I'm not.
Oh, wow. Wow. So heartfelt. So genuine, right? Fuck you. This is what he actually believes. It's like he's forgetting that we have this on camera.
Straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. We've all served with women and they're great. It just, our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable.
Okay. Outright liar, just going to brazen through this. Welcome to Crazy Town, and I will see you tomorrow morning.